Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of A Healthy Dose of Fran. Today the Avatar returns in a brand new video looking at the community of Avatar. Now I don't mean us fans in terms of community, instead I mean the actual community within the Avatar world and how many different things brought them together in times of strife and joy, but none more so than one particular aspect, and that's what I'll be looking at today. So today I'll be exploring Avatar and the sporting community. Now you're probably wondering why I decided to focus on sport in this video, and I'm kind of wondering too, because if anyone knows me, while I do enjoy going to the gym, I suck at it. I'm really bad at fitness and me, let's move on. So Avatar in terms of sport and why I decided to focus on it was basically when I was watching Legend of Korra recently, and it is the episode, which name and number I currently can't remember, when the Equalists are planning an attack really during the pro bending final, and instead of cancelling the match they decide to keep it going because, as Bolin, Korra and Mako explain, it is the one place that both benders and non-benders join together to feel something and enjoy something, and that is benders beating each other up with bending, essentially. And it was hearing that it made me wonder what else about sport in the Avatar universe, and even in our own world, helps bring communities like this together. And then I remembered this advert that Sainsbury's, which if any Americans or anyone else doesn't know what Sainsbury's is, it's basically like a British supermarket. I don't know if it is anywhere else in the world, so I may be sounding really stupid right now, but it's a supermarket here, and one of our Christmas adverts, which was, I don't know how long ago it was now, focused on this event during the First World War, where English and German troops on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day stopped fighting to play a game of football. And watching that advert and remembering that in terms of the fact that these guys were meant to be enemies, they were meant to be fighting and killing each other, but on Christmas Day they stopped and they played a game in no man's land. And it just, from that alone, it made me consider and wonder what sort of effect sport has in the Avatar universe. And when I started to go back through Avatar and Legend of Korra, I realised that sport actually has a very similar connection to times of strife and times of happiness and bringing people together. So that's why I decided to focus on sport as a community in this video, because there's actually a lot of examples of sport doing something to bring people together, like pro bending in Legend of Korra. Now the example I gave is predominantly the main one that comes to mind in terms of sport as a community. But there are also other examples of sport being something that is keeping people together. For example, when Korra is going through the harshness of PTSD and to try and battle it herself through physical means because she didn't know how to deal with it in terms of mentality, she joins a fighting ring in the Earth Kingdom to try and physically battle her demons. And while it wasn't in terms of a community in that sense, sport did do something for Korra. Now, while it wasn't particularly positive in that sense because she wasn't technically dealing with her problems, at the time it was something that Korra was doing to try and help herself and to try and stop these demons from overtaking her life. And then in terms of Avatar: The Last Airbender, there are a lot of different cases of sport being used to help deal with the horrific situation going on at the time, that being the 100-Year War. The main one being what actually happens in the opening pilot of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Penguin sledding. Now, this doesn't particularly seem like a sporting like aspect because, you know, it's penguin sledding. But as Katara notes, she hasn't done this since she was a kid. And it brings her joy in that moment of time because Aang is taking her to go penguin sledding, something that is joyous and fun to do, and it's sort of like a game. You've got to find a way to get the penguin to let you on its back. But you then enjoy yourself, you then let go of the worries of the war, even if it's just for that moment, and have fun. Then in the Earth Kingdom, as when we met Toph, there is an earthbending wrestling ring where people of the Earth Kingdom get to go and experience joy and gambling probably as well from the sounds of it, but forget all their worries, especially with this being of people of different rings, so the lower rings, the upper rings, all enjoying this sport together as a community. In terms of the earthbending and wrestling ring, that was more for the sense of enjoyment instead of relating to something to combat against the sadness of the war. But each nation does seem to have a sport of some kind that represents them and represents what was going on with them in the war. Now, for the Fire Nation, of course, it was the Agni Kais. That predominantly was their sport. And we can tell it was sort of a spectator sport from Zuko's Agni Kai with his father. There was an entire crowd of people there to watch and be entertained by an Agni Kai. Now, while that isn't a positive representation of sport as community, it is still a representation of community within sport. But for a positive one, I will move on to the Rise of Kyoshi, which has an Agni Kai-like battle with Rangi, the Fire Nation protector and bodyguard of Kyoshi, who, by the way, is my favourite character. And if you haven't read the book, go read the book now. Go read Rise of Kyoshi. I'll carry on. Now, there is a sort of, I call it the Fight Club in Rise of Kyoshi, because what was interesting with this club was that it was used to solve arguments, really. During the day, we saw people sort of starting a fight but then stopping instantly and having no real problem, because it turned out that they would then fight their problems in an actual physical fight, and whoever won that argument. And that again was a different form of sport as community, and that in a literal sense. This community used sport and a fight club to help deal with the community's problems, which in and of itself is a really interesting way of dealing with disputes as a community. Then, of course, we have the fantabulous mind sport, Pai Sho. Now, Pai Sho is a game of strategy and of the mind. You have to use your skills in terms of a strategist and in terms of patience, because if you don't have patience, you're not going to do particularly well. But anyway, there is also the other aspect of Pai Sho, which is the secret society of the White Lotus, which is again a literal community connected to a sport. Is it? Yeah, no. Well, I'm going to call it a sport. Anyone who wants to fight me on it, comment section. But again, it's another example of sport as community, and there are so many different ones throughout the Avatar universe as a whole, which were used to help battle the sadness of the war existing, the happiness and joy of people connecting together. Heck, we even have Asami and Korra sparring together because they're both frustrated and need to find a way to deal with it, so they use sport and each other's company to deal with that stress and anxiety. And just all of that as a whole is really interesting in terms of the Avatar universe, and I think it's something that needs to be explored and discussed a lot more than it is. Sport has more of a community role than we often think, and the world of Avatar is no different. Whether it be finding a way to combat the devastation and grief brought on by the war, finding entertainment and enjoyment in experiencing it, or creating a sense of equalness in a time of strife and difficulty. Whatever the case, sport has meaning, and sport helps build and sustain the community of Avatar in ways we didn't expect. So, what do you guys think? Do you agree that sport and community in the Avatar universe have a lot more significance than we would initially thought? And is there something else that you think needs to be explored in the Avatar universe? Whatever the case, let me know in the comment section down below. Before I sign off, I want to give a huge shout out to the fantastic guys over at the Arrow podcast, which I will link all in the description box down below. Now, the Arrow podcast have been doing an episode by episode exploration of Avatar: The Last Airbender and now Legend of Korra, and I had the absolute pleasure to join them on one of their Legend of Korra episodes. So go follow them, subscribe to them on Apple Podcasts, and just in general check them out, because they are so much fun to listen to. So to Tony and Chandler, thank you so much for having me on your show, and hopefully I can come back again soon. We shall see. In general though, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it. If you go to the description box down below, you'll find the links to all of my social media and my Patreon, where on Patreon you can get such things as early access, poll involvement and behind the scenes footage, and a bunch of other bonus material. But if you can't support me on Patreon, don't worry, I can always do with another subscriber here on YouTube. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.